everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Wired Women. I'm super excited for this edition because this is Black History Month and I have an amazing and special guest with me today, Tadiwa. Tadiwa, welcome to the Wired Women show, and it's a privilege to have you on the show. Please introduce yourself to our audience. Who is Tadiwa?
Well, Tadiwa, the full name is Tadiwa Nash Karumazondo. Tadiwa was born in Harare, Zimbabwe, and she moved to the UK almost 20 years ago. So when she was quite young, lived up north most of my life. So I like to call myself an honorary Geordie or Zimbabwean Geordie. I've lived in Newcastle most of my life. So currently I'm working in regulation as a HR professional. My educational background, a little bit about that. I did psychology for my undergraduate and I did occupational psychology for my master's. And on top of the day job, I also founded a social enterprise called Route to Be with a very good friend of mine. So yeah, quite a busy lady that's Tadiwa sometimes, most of the time.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your background as well as telling me about your job, which is a very rare treat because most of my clients or my guests only tell me half the story. So I love the authenticity that you're telling me both their personal as well as the business side of you, which is very exciting. So Taddy, can I call you Taddy?
Go for it.
So Taddy, so I know that you and I share some common background. We're both native Africans and we're also neighbors by country. So I come from Zambia and you're from Zimbabwe. So I really like to dig deeper, a little bit deeper into that kind of scenario because, you know, as a person living in the diaspora, obviously, I know that we come against or across, let's put it positively, we come across things that are not normal in so to speak, in our terms. But you've been here for 20 years. What would you say has been your story so far living and working in the diaspora and in particular in the United Kingdom?
I would say my journey has been quite interesting so far. Of course, I'm still quite a baby. I'm still quite a baby girl, as I like to tell myself. I'm 27. So I think that my journey so far has been interesting, partially because, you know, I've been up north most of my life, where if I tell you 20 years ago, you'd be able to pick out, you know, count like it was spot the black person sort of thing. And I think that comes with its own, I guess, experiences in the sense that, so growing up, you know, you're aware that you're in this environment where you are the only person that looks like you, or you're one of the very few people that looks like you. So from a young age, then the challenge is I have to fit in. You know, you don't want to be the one that stands out, but at the same time, you're conflicted because in your fitting in, you still don't want to lose who you are as a person, who you are as an African person. Yeah. So I think that from a young age was always there. And then, you know, the older I got, and then when I did enter into the world of work, you know, I understood the importance of just being me. So who cares if you fit in? Do you know what I mean? I am me, I am Tadiwa sort of thing. And, you know, me being Zimbabwean, me being African is part of what makes me me, and I need to embrace that, even if it means that I'm the only person, you know, in the room that looks like that. And then even experiences as well, you know, at work, I think sometimes as well, in speaking to, you know, some of my friends and my peers who have had other working experiences in different parts of the country, it is a different experience depending on where you're from. And I think sometimes being up north or living up north, there's a lot of things, I guess I've been told I'm tolerant of, that maybe some people down south may not be so tolerant of. But I think that is also kind of like a coping mechanism, you know, being a Black woman in a space where there aren't that many. And, you know, the stereotype for us is, we're very angry. I don't think we're angry or hostile. We're just passionate people, you know. So I think with that as well, it's been quite interesting because I find myself, you know, in a situation, it could be a work situation, how I deal with it. I then think, am I doing this because I'm trying to suppress or not trying to show what it is to be, you know, an angry Black woman? Or did I respond to that situation in a way that I felt like, you know, was the right way to do it? Was that what I genuinely wanted to respond, or did I do it that way because I'm worried about what people will think or what people will say. Am I going to fit that stereotype? So, it's kind of navigating those things of, what the stereotypes are, and also just not losing yourself as well in the midst of all of that. And yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
Thank you so much for that, Tadiwa. That's so interesting. You've unpacked quite a bit there. And if I can remember, trust me, my memory is not that good. But I think you talked about a point of social heredity, where, you come in as an African and you are always conscious of the fact that you are a native African, but you're also here. You've been here 20 years out of your 27 years of life. That means you're pretty much more English than you are Zimbabwean. I think it's safe and fair to say. So, but it's quite interesting. You went on to say that besides that, you still have to identify as a Zimbabwean, maybe by choice or maybe because of the stereotypical assertion that you find yourself in. It's quite interesting. Could you unpack for me, because obviously we're in Black History Month, and I would like, in order for that, could you unpack for me what that specific idea of having to fit in or not fit in and being yourself does look like on a daily basis, and how you've had to cope with it? What are your coping mechanisms that you referred to? And maybe just help somebody who might be listening to know what those attributes actually are defined like in your life.
Yeah, I think, let's say in a workplace setting, in a professional setting, sometimes I think there's a phrase or there's a term they use called code switching. So, I feel like in a code switching.
Code switching, okay.
Code switching. And it can be quite draining. So, I feel like sometimes I have to work extra hard to, think about what I'm going to say or how I'm acting, some of the utterances or things that, I might be around my African friends, and my response to something that's shocking could be something like, something so simple as that, where I know that maybe my African brothers and sisters may understand what that means, or what I'm trying to express, and just trying to, so I have to work extra hard just in terms of communication and how I present myself, in a way that I'm, like, people get me. So I feel like, because I am a minority, I still want people to understand me. But at the same time, one thing I have also found, and I am quite glad that I'm doing a lot more of, is also not being afraid to have those race conversations, or, it's little things, because I am in a setting most times, like I'm saying, where I am the only Black woman there. Let's not shy away from that. So I know that I am the Black woman there, but maybe sometimes you find you're in a situation where people don't want to talk about it, or, we use the phrase BAME, or there's some BAME individuals that, like, no, I am a Black woman and I know I'm a Black woman. Let's talk about it that way, and also understanding that for some people, it's not that, some of the phrases and stuff that they use, that's all they're exposed to. So not being afraid to have that conversation and being open, and knowing that for some people it's just they don't know. But if I'm in a position to make someone else understand, something about me that they don't, then I'm happy to do that. And like you said, I think one of the advantages that I do have is that I've been here most of my life. So I feel like it's kind of like the best of both worlds, and a bit of a balancing act, if you can call it that. So I don't want to discredit, the 20 years that I've been here and the Geordie that's in me, because that's still there, but at the same time, not forgetting where I come from as well. So it's just kind of like a amalgamation of everything at once. But yeah, I think that's how I would put it.
Power to you, girl. I think you're handling this very well. But to your point that you just made earlier on, as I was listening to you, and I couldn't help to think, I've had those instances where I've actually gone, like, this is like so African. Like, you don't do that. What does that even mean? And bless my long-suffering husband has had to deal with it, and he actually knows how to say it now.
Wow.
But more importantly, he knows what it means.
What it means, exactly.
The non-verbals.
Yes, it's those non-verbals, that you have to remind yourself that not everyone is going to know what that means,
So do it for me. Do you know how to do it?
Which one? Come on.
Well done. So much as you're a Jordan, I think you're still one of us.
Yes, I still got it.
Thank you for indulging me. So on a serious note, though, I do know that you are working as well as managing a business, which you co-founded with my previous guest, Ruth. So it's quite interesting to see and the parallels that go on between people working in the diaspora, whether you are actually an adopted Geordie as yourself, who's been here longer than you've been living in Africa itself. How do you balance that? And is that something that is frowned upon, or is that something that just comes natural? Because one thing that I've noticed is that us Africans, if I should speak for myself, maybe, have a tendency of doing that wherever we are, whether we're in America or wherever we are in the diaspora. We have a tendency of having a side hustle. We have a full-time job and then we have a side hustle. Is that something that's inherent in us, and how do you manage it?
I would say it is, in a way. I think I can speak for a lot of Southern African women. You would know that, as we were neighbors, that, a lot of us are mothers. They'll be working, but that on the side, mom has got, if she's not selling hair products, she's doing something else on the side. So you grow up seeing that, and you're seeing your older female role models, the people you grow up around in that society and what they're doing. But also what I learned growing up as well, that you've got your job, which it's there, it serves its own purpose, but I always say that I want to be more, sort of thing. So more for me then meant that, okay, so I am doing this job and I'm enjoying it, but what else have I got to offer? So that's where that came about. And I think balancing it for me has been, it's stressful at times, it's busy, but I think the passion is what keeps me going. So knowing, what people are benefiting and also what I'm benefiting from that journey, from that growth, having the side business and also working, my professional development, that's what keeps me going. And just having a supportive village around you as well, and people that understand your vision, people that understand your purpose, what you're trying to do, and not being afraid to reach out to those people that I know in my circles that I know they can help me in certain areas. I think that's definitely helps me balancing a lot of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So what would you say is that power tool that you've got as not just a badass female entrepreneur, but you're also Black. So being Black means that you also have other inherent challenges that you come across, but also maybe you've got advantages. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. That sounds like you look at us poor Black people, we are very underprivileged and whatever. But I feel like we also have a lot of positive things that we can offer, or that our Blackness provides us with. What would that be for you? What would that power to be? Because one of the things that you mentioned is that we're so bubbly and we love to work so hard. So you unpack that for me.
I think it's lived experiences. My power tool, I think, would be lived experiences, and not just my own lived experiences. It's also speaking to other Black people and understanding some of the things that they're going through and unpacking that with them as well. Because sometimes I may not have gone through something, and then when it does come about, I know that, Jen has maybe had some similar experience. So I know how I can kind of navigate or deal with that from having those conversations. I think for me, lived experiences and just having positive role models to look up to, that is it. But yeah, those are the main things I would say for me.
I like that a lot. I was privileged to be sitting in a lecture this week, actually, where I had this professor. She's a professor. Her name is Nadine. I don't remember what her last name is. She should be reaching out to contacting you this week, maybe. The person who's just released a book, which talks about all these lived experiences and how the imperialism and post-colonialism, colonialism and all that stuff might be now things of the past, but we're actually really literally living them, because they've just changed the titles and the names. Whereas, before we knew exactly what we were involved in, whereas, they were taking and plundering our resources from Africa and we were enslaved and all that stuff. But now it's like, the requirements, the visa requirements that Black people have to go through, the screening that they have to go through to even come to the United Kingdom in comparison to other races. Have you personally experienced things like that, maybe through your family, because obviously it doesn't affect you, but through other avenues? Like you said, lived experience could be through other people. Your circles, have you experienced any such biases or discussions, or just people talking about it and the frustration that comes with that?
Oh, definitely. And I think from the conversations that I've had with a lot of people, one thing I did find though was when I was speaking to, let's say, the older generation, the generation before me, or those like my parents that came here 20 years ago. When these things happen to them, and I compare that to, when such things are happening to my generation, one thing I did notice that we seem to have a lot more of is just the confidence to speak up about it. So a lot of the times, you hear in these conversations that this happened to me at work, this happened to me in that setting. But because of that colonial thinking, that colonial mind that's still in them, they won't voice out. To them, they know just to keep out of trouble is just to not speak about it. Whereas now, we're here, and like in my case, I've been here longer than anywhere else. We speak out about these things, and we're prepared to challenge when all of these things happen. I think it's so important. And I think a part of our wanting to do that is from seeing the frustration from our parents and those older generations not being able to speak out about it. We're in a position now where we can do, and even if I'm speaking out to one person in my organization, it's going to make a difference for the next person that looks like me that might come across that challenge, because they know not to treat someone a certain way. So definitely, I think it's there, and that's one difference for me that I have noticed. And I think, like we're saying, it goes back to those back in the day colonial thinking of just, we should just kind of keep quiet and take it, and it will just pass. The usage of the word challenge has piqued my interest, because obviously that's one of the reasons why I invited you, because I want to speak to people who challenge the status quo, and you're one of those people that I really admire, and I know that you're doing so much, and you're doing your bit to make a difference and to amplify the voices of those that cannot speak for themselves, and also to equip them with knowledge, abilities, and or employability skills to help them for their journeys to be that much easier than probably it was for you and for the people that generations before. Yeah,
absolutely. And that brings me nicely and neatly to what you do with Root to Be. Can you tell our viewers what it is that you are trying to achieve with Root to Be?
Yeah, so I can tell, I'll start it off by kind of giving you a bit of background on why we started, but we're not going on too much. Again, it was based on lived experiences. So as I said, we founded this with my friend Ruth, and it was on the back of her doing, like a Snapchat video, a day in the life of what she was doing. We'd met in uni, and I knew she was into project management, and I had done my psychology degree. And I was saying to her, we've known each other for this long, and you've done this kind of a day in the life of a project manager. And I've enjoyed it. I've known that this is what you do, but I've never really had this kind of insight. How much more do you think, people can benefit from having this? Because for me, it was just like, I'm seeing a badass young Black woman in a profession where, it's predominantly, loads of older white male.
Yeah.
And she's killing it, she's smashing glass ceilings. And we have these stories just looking at our circle. Why are we not talking about it? Because you don't know who you're going to inspire. And, especially for the younger generations. And also with us, one of the things that we spoke about was the challenge of, being that most of our parents came here to go into the healthcare sector. And a lot of the times, parents can only guide you. You can only take someone as far as you've been yourself. So because that's what the exposure mainly has been, they tend to encourage, us to go into those professions. But here we are, we're not doing that completely. And it's kind of like someone else needs to see that so that they can tell their parents that. But no, Mom, I've seen a Ruth, I've seen a Tadiwa, I've seen a Jen do something outside of healthcare, and they're doing it, and they're doing it very well. So yeah, when we started, that was the main thing. And I think even though we've expanded and we're doing a lot more and offering different services, the main thing is still just to, inspire and enable and empower, young people so that they're able to advance a lot more in whatever it is they're doing, be it, they're in the professional world or they are going into, business owning and doing their own thing. But the main thing being that they see there's visibility, that there's people who look like them that are doing the things that they want to do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. So, so from my understanding of what you've just shared, and probably even picking up from what Ruth shared previously, I see that you are really on a very good path to actually helping these young people move away from that cycle, that vicious cycle of repeating and being stuck in the same rut of like, I can only do so much, those limiting thinking mindsets, those limiting ideologies that have been probably passed on from one generation to another, to becoming much more, to becoming a better version of themselves, not necessarily to say, to say that the healthcare industry is not good enough, but actually say there is more. You can actually do more, and there are other options. You don't have to be stuck in this system just because everybody else has been doing. And because there's a running joke that goes on in Africa about us people living in the diaspora coming to work in the healthcare, because they say things like, I come from Africa. I live in, let's say, in the suburbs where, I was working, or I came from a working family of civil service and stuff like that, where we were privileged to have even servants and nannies looking after us. So they can't wrap it around their heads to think when you go to the diaspora, to live in the diaspora, you go and work in the healthcare and you're looking after people, because the jobs that we're talking about in the healthcare are not these normal jobs like being a doctor or being a nurse. We're talking about being a carer, a person who literally looks after the very ill people or the elderly people. There is a running joke that goes on in Africa that you're just moving to the Western world to wipe people's butts. And so that's kind of like a running joke, but it's actually a serious thing that we need to discuss and really nip it in the bud, that not everybody that comes to the Western world or the diaspora has to do that. It has to be a choice. A choice that somebody makes because they're compassionate. They want to work and look after the elderly. They want to work and look after the invalids, but not because that's the only job that they're good at. So I really like what you're doing with Root to Be, because that helps us to now start removing those cobwebs that are lying there and bringing up skeletons from the closets and just saying, you know what? We have choices, and educating our youth and letting them know that they do have these choices at their disposal and they can do better. So I'm really, really passionate about that. Don't get me started. Sorry. So I really love the idea that you are doing that. It's really an amazing job. Kudos to you for even bringing it up and noticing it, that it's existing and doing something about it. So moving on, as we come to a close to this amazing conversation, which I could go on and on forever, but I realize that we're running out of time. And I know that because you're so young, I cannot ask you to go back to your younger self, which is a 7-year-old. There's no point in that. Maybe you had to look back at 4 years ago, 5 years ago, to where you are at right now. What advice would you give to your younger self by 4 years? And what sort of takeaway would you want to offer as a piece of advice to our viewers?
I think for me, because in the last 5 years, that's when I've transitioned from being a student to actually stepping into the world of work and then having Root to Be. I think the advice that I would give myself earlier on is just to accept change. So be water, right? There's a saying, it's something that says, still waters run deep, right? And you never really know the power of full force of water until it's actually in motion. So I think sometimes what happens, especially for me anyway, what I found was when I was finishing uni, in my head, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get myself a nice little office job and whatever, but then life happens, right? And instead of letting that kind of get you down or kind of putting you off track, just roll with the punches. So, when you are presented with those things and those hurdles that come, deal with them, because it's part of your journey. It's part of, that growth. So learning to accept that, really, really earlier on when it's happening, it helps you in the long run, because then life happens, this happens, I pick myself up, I keep going, I've learned whatever I've learned from whatever hurdle that's come, I'm going to use that and it's going to come in handy. So I'd say just be willing to accept change and just being able to adapt, because as I said, currently my day job, I work in regulation, I did a psychology degree. How I ended up there, it's absolutely crazy. But I think if I didn't, accept change, and if I wasn't willing to adapt, then I probably would still be just kind of like putting myself in a box and maybe feeling like a failure, because my plans didn't go as I had envisioned them to in my head. But I'm grateful that I'm in a position where I'm doing really well, I'm progressing really well. And that all started with me just learning to adapt and just
I like that. That's very useful, because it's not we're not trying to say that you should just accept what's been handed to you, but it's accepting that sometimes things are not always what they seem to be, and that you can course correct and change the direction that you're going if you feel like you're getting stuck. That doesn't mean that you just have to accept, oh, I am Black, that means therefore I need to be in this box to a point. It just means that, what can I do with what I'm being handed? I'm given lemon. Let me make some lemonade.
Some good lemonade, exactly.
So thank you so much for that. So we're coming to the end of our amazing conversation, which is a little bit different from my usual Wired Women, because obviously I wanted this to be more focused on the fact of you being Black and living in the United Kingdom. So thank you so much for sharing who you are and what your life experiences, lived experiences in particular, have been for you since you've been living here in the United Kingdom. So if there were some viewers that are so interested and intrigued in learning more about you, and even just connecting with you at a personal level, how would they be able to find you?
You'll first probably find me on Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at taa.ashley. But also on our Root to Be pages as well. So on Instagram, again, it's at Root to Be. I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you with Shona names, you write it as it's being said. So it's Tadiwa Karumazondo. You can connect with me on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Tadiwa, it's been such a joy having you on the show. And I hope I can have you on our future shows as a proper guest, talking about what you do best as a professional. So today it's just been amazing to introduce you to our viewers as a person and as a person of color, and to share what your experience has been. So thank you so much for joining me on the Wired Women Special Edition. It's been an honor having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, you have a great day now, Tadiwa.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.